Hi, it's Jerry. We're back with Zoom chats, and today we're talking with Josh Molina, reporter for Noozhawk, journalism instructor at Santa Barbara City College, father of two. You got a lot of things going on. You're trying to balance while you're at home, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. We have, obviously, at City College, we moved to remote learning. So I'm having to teach 13 units online, lots of Zooming. I have two kids at home who also have their Zoom classes, and I have a kindergartner. So that's been quite the experience to watch a kindergartner teacher teach to my 6-year-old. And actually, that's been really cool to see all the work that kindergarten teachers do, because they, at least in my situation, put in a lot of time, and my 6-year-old's doing a good job trying to keep up with all the work. Got a 14-year-old in high school, so I presume he's Zooming in his room all day. I don't
Yeah,
really need to
I
do
got the
much
room.
with
Yeah,
him.
I got the door shut though. Yeah, okay. I want to talk about the schools a little bit, but I was hoping we could talk about something about non-coronavirus, but then I realized everything's about the coronavirus. You got two scoopy things today on Noozhawk. One is kind of a turmoil at City Hall a piece, and the other's about the school district and this so far secret plan about what they're going to do about grading. Let's talk about the City Hall thing first. You lead with Paul Casey, the city administrator, saying he's going to take a pay cut, and I guess that's clearest evidence we can have that we got a big budget deficit coming and a lot of financial problems off of the pandemic. What's going on?
Well, there's a lot of tension at City Hall right now. Even before the pandemic, City Hall was facing lots of scrutiny with the increase in retail vacancies on State Street. A lot of money went into that. They hired an economic development manager. Every business in town, every property owner in town has an opinion on how to fix things. And then we had this pandemic. And so now everything that was important 6 months ago is now magnified greatly.
Yeah.
And everything is sort of focused on city manager Paul Casey, Kathy Murillo, the mayor. People have lots of questions about leadership. It's a difficult time for everybody. And so everybody's looking to get some kind of control over the situation. We've lost a lot of control in our daily lives, and we're sort of just figuring things out as we go. And in the context of the city, everybody's sort of looking for the city to do something.
Do
What is
something.
the city's plan to fix the economic challenges that we have downtown?
Yeah. Well, let's break it down a little bit because there's kind of two parts. One is how are we going to play defense against the pandemic? And I'm talking fiscally here because the public health piece is really over in the county. But I mean, this is going to be a tremendous whack to the city budget. Sales taxes, there's no tourism. And we're too small to be eligible for federal aid so far. So what's your sense of how the magnitude of the budget hit that we're looking at? And
Well, today, Tuesday at City Hall, they had a closed session, and they're going to be talking about how to make cuts. They're meeting with every union in the city in one day, every union representative. And it's a big deal because everybody is going to have to take some cuts. City administrator, city manager Paul Casey, in my story, he said that, yes, he's going to lead by example. He's going to take a cut. He's not going to ask other people to do what he wouldn't do. So that's significant. That's a big deal. He's out there, and everyone else is going to have to expect that there's going to be some sort of reduction in payroll. They've already furloughed about 500 part-time employees, and there's no real way out of
people who could
this.
at least afford it is who they let
That,
go. The people who could least afford it, the people working by the hour without.
yeah, these are hourly workers, kiosk workers, summer camp counselors, and there's really no way out of it because the revenues have come to an incredible halt. So it's going to get bad. It's going to be tough, and everybody's going to have a perspective on how to fix this thing. And nobody really knows the answer. It's going to take a combination of things to do it.
Yeah, I mean, in your story, Kathy tells you that she's looking at cuts that don't diminish our service to residents. That's a good trick. How does that work? What is she talking about?
Well, Paul Casey was a little more raw in his comments in the story. He said, we have to look everywhere and no one is going to be spared. Kathy, the mayor of Santa Barbara, was a little more political. I didn't get the sense that she was ready to start making cuts to administration or council members at all. I think she wants to take a look at the budget before moving forward. And it sort of points to the larger criticism that people have of the mayor right now, in that they want to see decisive leadership. And here, even in this story, she's saying she needs to see the budget, she needs to see the revenues before she can decide who's and where it's going to get cut. And she has sort of a really strong defense of the administration, saying everybody's working 7 days a week. And so I'm sure that did not resonate well with some people, because everybody's working really hard or wanting to work really hard. Everybody's impacted, and these are the highest paid people in the
her
city.
comments kind of came across as whining. It's like, well, I'm working so hard, I can only see a movie, whatever. And she really hasn't been very visible. I mean, political leaders always have that tension in any disaster scenario. You don't want to look like you're out there grandstanding, but on the other hand, you want to have some visibility and let people feel a little secure that, somebody's kind of guiding the ship. But she's really been very, very low visibility in this.
Yeah, well, Kathy's not a born politician. She's a former journalist. And I think that she approaches politics sometimes like a journalist does. She's very cautious. She stays sort of in the middle, and she doesn't make a lot of sweeping conclusions and judgments. And, obviously in the world of politics, it's so much about presentation and the appearance of leadership. And if people believe in you, and if they think that you're going to take decisive action, they're going to jump on board. But if they sense any indecisiveness or any inability to act swiftly and quickly, you're going to lose some support. So I think she's struggling with that. And she's just not the type who's going to lead first. I think she needs to check in with a lot of people before deciding how to approach. Some would say that's thoughtful, but at this moment in time, everyone's hurting and everybody wants somebody who's going to lead immediately.
Yeah, we have this unprecedented situation, even if it's like somebody coming out and saying, this is unprecedented and we're trying a lot of things or whatever. I push back a little bit on your thought there. I don't think it's so much that she is behaving as a journalist as it is she's behaving as if she's afraid of the journalists. She was going to, talk to me on this program, and she canceled, and, I haven't heard from her since. And, it's like she's afraid of, getting quoted somehow. Everything's very kind of programmed and studied with her comments, even to you. But let's talk about this business task force that she sort of quietly apparently assembled. And I think the most remarkable thing in your piece is that Oscar Gutierrez, the council member for District 3 on the west side, who's been really one of her closest allies, I mean, her acolyte, is kind of angry at her because he was out of the loop and she's done this quietly. How did this all come about?
I was very surprised that Oscar was that publicly critical of the mayor. Apparently, she's been working recently to assemble this task force, and she has been making calls. I think she's been consulting with Paul Casey, and she's trying to assemble a team. She's calling it the Business Advisory Team, or BAT is the acronym that she used. And she's trying to assemble this team to be responsive, to show some leadership.
Better than the economic team, I suppose. Anyway, go ahead.
And so she kind of did this, and Oscar Gutierrez was upset because he had to hear about it from some of the developers in town, and business people in town that this was happening. And he was upset because he had been wanting to pull some people together as well, some people out at the university, and no one consulted with him. And then he heard on the street from a developer that Kathy was forming this task force and he had not been consulted. And this is significant because Oscar was elected to the city council largely because Kathy Murillo campaigned on his behalf. She went all out to support him, to get him on the council on the west side in the district election. And Oscar is not, in this situation at least, feeling as though he's going to go along with her. He's got some real concerns that the task force is made up of Kathy's supporters mostly, and not a lot of people who can push back and encourage and have ideas that maybe she's not in charge of.
Well, the other thing that sort of jumped out at me, there's not really anybody from the commercial real estate State Street. I mean, this is the other piece. We talked about how, we're playing defense against the coronavirus on the budget. And so this is the offense, how are we going to grow the economy, develop the economy, which, as you say, was a problem before. But how are you going to do it without any voice for the people on State Street, who are going to have a big say about those vacancies?
Well, there's no property owner as of the story who is a part of the task force. There are developers and there are people with property interests, but there's nobody who owns property. And so that's kind of a big red flag. I imagine once this thing is unveiled, that maybe she's going to be pressured to sort of add some people and change the task force. But right now, there are some people who think that she just formed something to appear as though she wants to form some sort of
she was getting a lot of criticism. She was getting a lot of criticism about being invisible. And
it's
go ahead.
It's a little bit of a trigger for her because after 1/9, she also got the criticism. Unfortunately, that was the day she was sworn in, and there was criticism at City Hall for her not responding after the debris flow. And so now here it is again, and people are just raising questions as to what she should be doing. I mean, the truth is that it's going to take a lot of different people from multiple different sources of the community to pull this together. Her job is to show leadership and to not really show caution. So we'll see if she's able to adjust midstream and sort
what is your understanding at this point about what this task force is supposed to do other than give some political cover to the mayor that makes it look like she's doing something? Is anything substantive going to come of it?
Conversations, collaborations, ideas, working together. Oscar, or actually it was Hal Conklin in my story today, who said that, he had kind of a crude quote, but he said that he doesn't really think a lot's going to come of it because the right people aren't on it, and you need to have the right mix, and it needs to be from the community's perspective, not seen as a top-down thing. And already out of the gate, it's seen as something that's coming from the mayor's office without much collaboration. There's a big meeting at City Hall today, and we'll see how that turns out. Yeah,
Hal's quote was comparing it basically to, some person that's on their last legs with coronavirus being on a respirator, which was actually pretty funny. But then you say that he is also having some kind of, Mayor Hal Conklin is also having some kind of task force something on Thursday. Is that in alignment with Kathy, or is it parallel, or what's that about?
He's doing his own thing. He's doing Zoom meetings with property owners, and he's, Hal ran for mayor. He's the former mayor, former city council member. He's got a lot of cachet in the community, and he's been very active. And there are people in the business community who want him to run for mayor, run against Kathy. And I asked him about that. He said it's, still too far away, but he's involved. He
That's
cares
what you
about
call your non-denial denial there.
Yeah, I mean, not denying is confirming to a journalist, but he he basically, he's involved in these things, and he still does have political aspirations. And I think he probably wants to position himself as somebody who can get things done without having to be in that mayor's seat right now.
Well, and also he's, I mean, he's active. He works on a lot of things. To benefit the community. And you and I covered that mayor's race, and you have to look back and say, who was really, kind of had any sort of a vision about what they wanted to do that kind of went beyond, process. And I thought he did. So that's kind of a shot across her bow. And then the Oscar piece is interesting to me too, because isn't he gotten kind of closer to like Ed St. George and that his allies in the development community, and are they feeling left out of the Kathy thing?
Well, I think, Oscar has had the reputation from the get-go when Kathy very widely embraced him and endorsed him, and people wondered whether he was going to be a shill for Kathy. Would he be loyal to her? Would he be loyal to the Democratic Party? So, he's been there a little more than a year, and he's starting to get a sense of who he is. And I think on this issue, it's very personal to him. He is a local guy. He grew up here. So he's got a lot of ideas on this, and he doesn't like feeling excluded. He doesn't like feeling left out. And I think the developer community is trying everything and trying to talk to as many council members as they can to see if they can build an alliance. And I don't know if Oscar, whose side he's on, but I think he's definitely listening to everybody in the community. And he just basically does not like to be left out of things, and he has his own ideas on this stuff.
Well, and that the letter to the editor that appeared in Noozhawk from St. George and Ed St. George and a bunch of other developers calling for Paul Casey's to be fired. So that seems like another undercurrent that's kind of going on here.
Yeah, perfect storm. James Finkner had started the petition to have the salaries of the top 10 highest paid administrators cut by 30%. And that's what everybody wants. They want them to share the pain. And Paul's acknowledgement of that was big news, because he said, yeah, I'm willing to do that. There was another petition, saying that Paul Casey needs to go about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So there are all these prongs, and they're all sort of focused on City Hall and City Hall's inability to lead or be efficient. It's a difficult thing because business always wants government to run like a business, and government doesn't really understand business, and they have a constant sort of steady stream of revenue. And so when you have a situation like this where revenues drop dramatically, it's sort of this perfect storm for the business community to say, hey, we know how to do this. We know how to manage budgets. We know how to keep our business alive and survive. So you need to listen to us. And government is not used to being in this situation because they usually have their revenues guaranteed to some degree. So,
yeah. And then right in the middle of this parachutes in Jason Harris, the newly minted economic development manager, who's got to be thinking, what have I gotten myself into? He's kind of going to make his debut, I guess, today, huh? He's going to talk at least to the council. Yeah. So he's going to get whipsawed, all kinds of ways. What's your sense of him? Is he kind of a strong leader type who's going to, have the opportunity to seize control of this process, or is he going to get spit up and chewed out right away?
Well, he's in a tough spot. I did a story for him, and I got the sense that he was
a story on him. You didn't do a story for him, Josh. I read that story.
Yeah, no, I did a story on him, and I got the sense that he's a nice guy and he means well, but he is likely to experience what so many other people experience when they come into Santa Barbara. We saw the president, the executive director of the downtown organization serve a year and then leave recently, is that You really have to know the community to get things done in Santa Barbara. You cannot come in with economic expertise and your experience in other cities and expect to transplant that into Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is a very unique community, and it takes time to build relationships, understand the players, understand the landscape. He is not going to be able to do that instantly. That's going to take him a long time.
He's from Santa Monica, right?
Yeah,
And
he's from San. I mean,
he has good reviews for what he did in Santa Monica. But your question is you know, how's that going to translate? Plus, isn't he living in Thousand Oaks?
yeah. So the other problem with that is his wife works at Amgen in Thousand Oaks, and he said he has a studio here in Santa Barbara where he's going to stay at during the week, but his primary residence right now is in Thousand Oaks. And so, how do you meet with people after work when you're on the road for an hour and 15 minutes? These are significant challenges and issues. So he's going to have to rely on the people around him at the beginning, Paul Casey, and you have the business community who is a bit unhappy with Paul Casey right now. So already there's skepticism. I think people are hopeful. They hope that he's able to figure things out. I know the council is wanting to give him a fair shot and see what he can do, but it's not going to be one person. It's going to take a lot of different approaches, and City Hall is going to have to bring in the business community, the property owners, and work together. Otherwise, it's just going to be combat here for the next several years at a time when everyone really needs to pull together.
Well, and the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about, of course, is the community development department and the crazy making Byzantine permitting process and the kind of nickel and dime stuff that goes on over there. Is that going to be, I mean, that was this, to a large extent, the focus of the consultant's report that was sort of the last major step in this process that we're talking about. Are they going to be have a target on them?
Yeah, they have a target on them. If it were up to a lot of the businesses and developers in the community, they would just start over with the community development department. A lot of the people who they did like have left. They're not happy with the leadership there. And they're not going to be happy until there's some sort of change in leadership at City Hall, whether it's the community department, the city administrator, city attorney's office. They're going to keep pushing and pressing, and everybody is frustrated right now. And so everything's heightened because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's not going to look good for the next period of time.
Well, that was a good story you had, because it pulls a lot of threads together about what's going on. So everybody ought to check that out in Noozhawk today. And then the other story you had, and we're going to have to talk quickly on this, is about the school district and outgoing superintendent Kerry Matsuoko, and how the board's going to be able to find a superintendent, in this atmosphere is a whole nother question. But basically, they got this secret proposal, once again in secrecy, about how they're going to handle grades with this unprecedented situation of, kids going to school virtually online or not connecting with that at all. Where does that stand?
Yeah, that's a bigger issue in terms of transparency. What's happening at City Hall is a lot of it's politics, it's personality. What's happening at the school district is you've got them proposing this change to the grading policy. Other districts have done it. They've swiftly made decisions, but it was out there in public. The school board has decided to have an emergency meeting on Thursday to decide whether to allow students to have a no credit option, or whether to keep their grade, or whether to keep the grade that they had at that moment, or take the grade that they would have at the end of the semester. There's all these options, and everything that I just told you, none of it came from Superintendent Kerry Matsuoka. In fact, none of it came from anybody in the district.
Or from Cami.
Because they will not talk on the record. And the reason is that they are saying that, oh, this is still in process. We're still figuring it out. Okay, it's Tuesday. The school board meeting is on Thursday. The agenda is going to come out on Wednesday. How in the world are people supposed to get any sort of understanding of what this proposal is in less than 24 hours? On top of that, it's a virtual meeting. So that energy of the room, that public pressure where the school board has to look people in the eye and make a decision, it's not there. And so this situation points to a larger problem with the school district, which is much more serious than City Hall, is that there's a lot of parents in the community who are very unhappy with the leadership. Of course, they love the teachers. This is really not a teacher issue. It's a really administration issue with Carrie Matsuoka, who just flat out declined to say anything at all specific other than we're having a special meeting. We are getting a new superintendent fairly soon. Maybe some of this will change.
Well, and it's not just the parents either. It's a couple of members of the school board too who are not at all happy with him. And it is ridiculous that, we're going to have a secret meeting, but, we'll tell you about it 24 hours in advance. I mean, to a certain extent, does it matter, with Megan in kindergarten or Jackson and Vivian? No, but if you're a senior or a junior and you're going to be applying to college and your GPA is going to be a big deal, and admittedly, yeah, it's going to be a national problem, but this is huge, and you ought to have some ability, or your parents should have some ability to weigh in on this. It's ridiculous. And the two, Sean Carey and Raul Ramirez, the two assistant superintendents, of course, are the ones in the back room cooking the whole thing up.
I think that this could have been handled administratively, according to Laura Capps, who said in the story. And so she has pushed hard to put it on this Thursday agenda. They were going to have a meeting anyway to review the superintendent candidates, and now they're adding this item to it. I have to believe that they're going to have an option for students to keep their grade. I just can't imagine that they're going to end up with the public pressure and a couple of the school board members who probably are going to feel a certain way about it. I can't imagine that they're not going to give students the option to take the grade that they have, because you're right, these people want that GPA for their college applications. And I don't think nobody wants to be punished here on no matter what side of the spectrum you're on.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Next time we have to talk about the fact that there's an election for school board this year for 3 seats, which ought to be very interesting too. Well, Josh, I don't know how you do it. You got all, you're locked in your room, you're teaching classes, you got 2 kids, and you're still scooping on stuff all over town. So thank you for being with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Well, Jerry, I had some good editors over the years, so some of it rubbed off on me. So
Name no
thanks for having me on your show.
I'll talk to you.
Bye.